Chapter 19. What does it mean to be human? The wisest of men and the brightest of women have pondered this question for many years. We will continue to contemplate this question for many years to follow. The cycle of life is quite simple. We're born, we live, and we die. It's the basic structure for every story, and like every story, humans are drawn to that inevitable conclusion. We want to find out what happens to the hero or heroine. Will the question they seek ever bubble to the surface? Will they become the person they were destined to be? We don't know the answers to these questions, yet we continue to scavenge for any shred of answers. Just one small morsel will suffice. For only so long, however, for with each grain of knowledge humans seek, they turn into an addict. This curiosity about our finite existence is eternal beauty and vile darkness swirled into one, a duality of being. Rod thinks about this most evenings while in the Wasteland, watching the hypnotic blaze from the campfire. His mind drifts to these questions more when in civilized communities, a term he uses loosely. He spends the majority of his time in the last remaining cities just watching how people act and how they treat one another. The pendulum will swing far left or far right, never stopping at absolute harmony. Some will give a warm nod or a compassionate gesture, while others glare in scornful hate and malice. The hunter longs for the camaraderie and human interaction like anyone else, but the prolonged time in larger communities often brings him craving for the sweet solace of the wasteland. The land is at its most basic of instincts, to survive by any means necessary. The greed, narcissism, and utter control of power ooze throughout Midland, and no doubt the Dark City. The whispers and scheming throughout the city keep Rod on edge at all times, his back arched and tightened like a panther waiting to strike the coiled snake. But in the Wasteland, there are no politics or scheming humans playing a chess game over limited resources and power. Just him and the open road, taking each obstacle head-on as it comes. The 15-minute walk to the jailhouse gives the hunter time to enjoy several cigarettes and soak in the architecture from the past civilization. He's able to sneak a peek at lush gardens tucked away between the thin alleyways. Another reminder that there is always beauty in the vilest of places. You just need to know where to look. The jailhouse sits between two taller buildings. A small grassy park is no more than 50 yards away. The leaves from the trees have started to wilt and fall to the earth. The children have raked the brown and red foliage into piles. Their screams of delight erupt out as they crash into the leafy mounds. Two horses pulling a rusted truck stop next to the park. An older gentleman calls out to the children for a treat. The screeches bellow out of the children's lungs as they race to the corroded green vehicle. Several women giggle at the children as they tend to the day's newest gossip. Each woman is dressed in more colorful outfits than the citizens Rod saw earlier, with two sitting on a wooden park bench. He observes two blade arms near the adjacent intersection, watching every move the old merchant makes. Rod takes a final drag as the events in the park unfold. He flicks the butt out into the street and ascends the stairs to the jailhouse entrance. He crosses into the lobby of the jailhouse and is greeted by a scruffy old man at the reception desk. The bushy-browed man shifts his spectacles across the bridge of his nose while reading through a frail sheet of paper. He takes several slow strokes along his white beard while losing himself to the words scribbled across the page. He doesn't notice the olive-skinned hunter at first, too enthralled with what's in front of him. Rod knocks on the desk to snap the wrinkled receptionist's deep reading. The old man is jarred back to reality. He sighs and moves his gaze up to gaze upon the villain that awoke him from his mental adventure. His eyes widen, and a smile forms. The bearded receptionist gets to his feet and lets out a howl of a laugh. "Well, I'll be damned if it isn't Rod Calloway standing before me. How are you, son?" "I'm fine, Jaren. How are you?" "I'm dying, but aren't we all? How long you in town for? Mrs. sure would love it if you came by for supper one evening." The old friends shake hands. Jaren reaches for his blade-arm coat on the back of his chair and slips it on as he shuffles to an open book on the desk. Rod follows and replies, "That would be quite nice, but I won't be in town for very long. I have business up north to attend to." "No doubt competing in the tournament. If anyone has a chance, it would be you, my boy. Several friends left on the train yesterday to purchase front-row seats. Going to be a spectacle of the ages." "That's what I hear. Kendrick asked me to stop by." "Ah, yes, but first, I'll need you to sign in here," Jaren replies, pointing to the open book. Rod reaches for the pen from Jaren and signs the logbook. The old blade arm grasps a black rotary phone next to the leather-bound book and dials. A voice answers on the other end. Jaren greets the voice with the utmost respect. "Captain, yes, he's here." He nods to the voice out of instinct and hangs up after hearing the click on the other end. Jaren licks his cracked lips and looks back at the hunter. "The captain will be here in a moment. I know you've told me to stop bringing it up, but I can't thank you enough for what you've done for me and my own. My offer still stands. I'm in need of strong grandsons, and my daughters are in prime fertile conditions. What do you say?" "Not interested, Jaren. I'm sure there are plenty of young men here more than willing to marry your beautiful daughters." Jaren blows a crotchety sigh to Rod's statement. The thought of the men in Midland shifts him to a morose demeanor. "The men here only care about the dowry, which they'll just blow on booze and whores." Rod stays silent, allowing the time-worn policeman to stand on his proverbial soapbox and complain, peevishly bringing up the politics of Midland and how disgraceful Lord Vinnick's tenure has been. He disagrees with the stance of trading off the majority of Midland's resources to Orgrimdir in hopes of receiving a new power source. "Rumor has it," Jaren says, "the Dark City is in the final stages of bringing a reactor online. Supposedly it will produce enough power for all of Orgrimdir. In return for the resources scavenged from the ruined city, Midland will be given access to this power." "Do you have any idea what exactly this reactor is?" Jaren lowers his voice as he peers around the lobby for eavesdroppers. He looks back to Rod and continues. "No clue. I think it is all a ruse to steal our resources. Lord Vinnick is too frightened to go against the will of Draconis. I've heard whispers of spies in our midst as well." Jaren spots a figure walking up. He leans back and passively motions Rod to keep mum. The hunter lightly nods as the captain comes up to the desk. He stands at attention and reaches his hand out to Rod. "I'm Captain Siran. The commander said you would be by sometime today to visit the prisoner." Rod reciprocates. "Sure, let's go with that." "Please, sir, follow me." He nods to the captain and heads down the hallway, but not before patting on the shoulder Jaren with a sly wink. The captain escorts the hunter down a white hallway with brown trim. A large crack spiders along the left side wall, spreading itself out along the ceiling. The hallway dead ends after about 20 yards, with a set of stairs heading up and down. The men take the stairs down 2 flights. The doorway opens into the prison basement. Rod is quite surprised by the sheer number of soldiers in the prison block. Prison cells make up the majority of real estate along both sides of the room. The captain escorts him forward to a small crowd of blade arms. Each soldier is whispering to each other as they gawk at the figure in the concrete pit. A blade arm spots the 2 men advancing and nudges several of his colleagues. A sea of elbow nudges and coughs fill the air as Rod and the captain draw near. Saran speaks out to the crowd. "Enough with the staring, get back to work." Captain Saran and Rod part through the men like the Red Sea. The hunter is able to discern one of the soldiers' conversations. "I can't believe he's been standing there for almost a week straight." Before Rod can think about the comment, he's standing at the edge of a round concrete pit. The pit is about 7 feet deep with a ladder to descend at his feet. The sight is horrifying to Rod as he looks into the damp hole. Several blade arms stand guard around the perimeter of the open, circular prison. The prisoner is standing in the center with wrists and ankles shackled and sprawled out like the Vitruvian Man. The chains are fastened to the inner lining of the pit. Another shackle attaches around the prisoner's neck and connects to the inner wall behind the bound beast. It did not stop there. His waist and thighs are also restrained with iron manacles. The man bound before Rod is naked, all belongings stripped from his person. The prisoner's dark, shaggy hair is wet from dripping water overhead, caused by a leaky pipe. No doubt never fixed as a means to torture the individual. The small, random drip-drop on the head causes men to go mad with lack of sleep. The tactic didn't work against this behemoth of a man, with a Herculean physique and strength to match. He is covered neck to toe with scars, an unnerving reminder of his sorrow and painful past. The soldiers spent several days coming and going, in hopes of finally seeing the prisoner give in, howling to be released. He gave them no such satisfaction. He did not speak, and did not ask for solace from the pain of standing. He endured the torment, made it a part of his life. Rod knows this brother-in-arms far too well, and the rage boiling inside of him almost became too much. Before he can lash out and kill every last man in the room, a familiar voice speaks from behind. "He hasn't spoken since his arrest." Rod's anger subsides, only enough to find the right words to respond to Kendrick. "Why is Gabriel chained like a wild beast?" "Because he is a wild beast. He was arrested for disturbing the peace. The man took out a chunk of a building in the lower section. 10 of my men are in the infirmary due to one of his rage fits." Rod faces Kendrick, eyes locked on one another. "What triggered his rage? And where is Slade?" Rod asks heatedly. "For all I know, his brother is gone," Kendrick replies. "We have not been able to track him down. We've checked his usual spots. As for the trigger, I have not gotten enough information. Witnesses state there was an argument between the brothers and several men. It looks like my men showed up a little too late and were in the crossfire." "Slade wouldn't leave. Something isn't right. Release Gabriel now, Kendrick." The commander's black eyebrows sink inward. His tone grows fierce. "He's a liability. I can't have him roaming the streets. What happens next time his rage triggers? It's one thing for my blade arms to get in the crossfire. It is a whole other issue if innocent civilians get caught up in it." "I'll take responsibility for him. Place him in my custody," Rod demands. "You do this, and your life will become forfeit if something happens. He takes an innocent life. You have to pay the blood debt with your own." Rod doesn't hesitate with his answer, eyes still transfixed on Kendrick's. "So be it. Now release him." Kendrick gestures to one of the lieutenants from across the pit. He in turn acknowledges and gestures to the guards to unshackle the bestial man. Rod turns, dropping into the pit and rushing over to his confined friend. The naked Herculean behemoth stands motionless, with his soggy hair masking half his face. Only his angular jawline can be seen. Rod stands before the sullen man and speaks in hopes of not rousing the raging devil within. "Gabriel, it's me, Rod. Are you there?" Rod carefully grabs Gabriel's face with both hands and moves it up. The eyes are open, but his stare is lifeless. The pale-skinned warrior placed himself into a trance, a way to shift all pain into a euphoric state of being. Rod recognizes the technique. It was taught to them by Lopan, another hunter in their ragtag family. A form of deep meditation by channeling all the body's pain into a focal point, allowing the meditator to manifest their soul outside of their body. Outside of Lopan, Gabriel is the only one that took to the technique quickly. It is the perfect conduit to counterbalance the fury inside himself. Rod finds the brand still etched into his skin, the symbol still black as night on the back of his neck. "Still haven't found her," Rod whispers to Gabriel. The hunter begins to hum to his spellbound friend, a hymn they would often hum while doing chores back at Gramps' cave. It is a link between them all, and for this moment, the only way to bring Gabriel back from his catatonic state. It does not take long for Gabriel's eyes to find life. He blinks to create enough tears to hydrate his eyes. Brown overtakes the gray in his irises, signifying to Rod that his soul was not severed from the body. He was gone, but not too far gone. Gabriel moves his dry, split lips and expresses with a grainy tone, "Water." Rod smiles at his friend. He yells out to the guards, "Bring water." Several moments pass, and a guard hands Rod a small canteen. He takes hold of the canteen and brings it to Gabriel's lips, taking it gently and allowing his dehydrated comrade to dictate the speed and amount of the liquid. As Gabriel finishes the last drop of the refreshing liquid, Rod directs the guards to remove his restraints. They remove all shackles except the waist, saving that for last so Rod can position himself as a brace. To all the guards' amazement, Gabriel stands before them under his own power. The two men walk up to a table with Gabriel's clothes neatly folded. Kendrick had them washed while Gabriel was in lockup. Torn between duty and friendship, Kendrick did what he could. Gabriel slips on his undergarment and brown pants. His dark leather boots come next. The attached metal shin guards come up to the burly man's knees. A white cotton shirt with a dark leather vest followed, with a dark green coat and leather gauntlets last. The gauntlets are lined with steel for his wrists to support the massive claymore he wields. Gabriel glares at the guard standing in front of the wooden table. "My sword." The guard stutters for a moment, trying to find the right words that won't get his head bashed in by the towering man in front of him, standing just shy of 6'9". "Commandeer Kendrick has commandeered the weapon until you leave Midland, sir." Rod interjects. "That's fine. As you can probably tell, he won't be needing it." Rod smirks at the terrified guard, giving him a swift pat on the back as he makes his way to the stairs. The two hunters continue to the lobby, saying a swift goodbye to Jaren, then exit out into the mid-afternoon breeze. Their first stop is food. The hunters retrace Rod's steps and head back to the mouth of madness. This time he chooses a booth near the wall. The vixen bartender walks over to the two men with another bottle and glasses in hand. Rod smiles at Rosalind and declines. "No more drink today, Rosalind. I'll take some water." "Goat's milk for me," Gabriel replies. "Also, I'd like the biggest portion of meat and potatoes you can muster for my friend here, my treat." Rod pulls a small gold bar and slides it to Rosalind. Her eyes swell. "Sure thing, darling. It'll be right out." Rod takes a moment to indulge in his favorite pastime, giving Gabriel a moment to collect his memories. No sense in digging for information on an empty stomach, he thinks as Rosalind returns with the drinks. Gabriel chugs back the milk and asks for another. Rod chuckles at his friend and responds, "Better make it 2 this time, Rosalind." "You got it, darling." On the bartender's return, she sets down a plate half filled with a pot roast, a quarter with potatoes and gravy, and another quarter with green leafy veggies. Her right hand holds 2 pints of goat's milk. Gabriel, with his calm demeanor, thanks the bartender and dives right into the meat. He wastes little time with chewing, using his fork as a shovel. His hand can't bring the food to his mouth fast enough. Rod shakes his head and takes several sips of his water. He watches his old friend eat while contemplating the coincidence of them meeting here. 2 years have passed since the hunters were all together, each person witnessing the tragic and horrific death of their leader, friend, and mentor. It can't be a coincidence. Something else is at play here. Too many pieces are falling too perfectly into place. Rod's hidden memories crawl out of the depths as he recalls that ominous night, the attack on the arachnid mound and the finding of the hive mother, the fresh scent of rainfall splashing onto the dry earth, with the cool, dark night enveloping the party as they quietly snuck into the narrow dune entrance. All hunters were accounted for that night. All had a role to play. Even the green Elena brought her tech to help in the hunt. By all accounts, the contract was a success. The hive mother was slain and the arachnids vanquished, but they lost Gramps. Their pride got the better of them. The hunters thought they had all the answers and understood how the demons functioned. Their arrogance cost them dearly. Rod loses the memory as another epiphany strikes his soul. His memories are free from the confines of the Dark One. He doesn't feel its cold grip. Instead, another sensation crops up. A voice speaks out from his subconscious. He's never heard it before. Its message is distant and hard to make out, but Rod feels like it is giving him a warning. The words move on a ripple of time lost to his consciousness. He strains to discern the message, but Gabriel releases a monstrous belch. Rod snaps back to the present, looking at his friend finishing his last mug of goat's milk. He sets the mug down and wipes his milk mustache before calmly speaking. "I'm sure you have plenty of questions for me." "Yes, I do. I have no doubt you'll fill me in with everything you remember." The Titanic man leans back into the cushioned bench and crosses his arms, searching for the best jumping-off point to his story. Rod reaches for his tin and lights up another cigarette and listens to his friend's tale. Gabriel's dark eyes pierce through his shaggy brown hair. "Slade and I finished a contract east of Midland, near Wester Wall. A caravan of merchants was overtaken by a pack of Kajin. To our misfortune, the damn mutants killed every last one of them, or so we initially thought. We slaughtered a small hunting pack, leaving one alive to track back to their den. The pack brought the women to the den for after-dinner festivities." Gabriel gives a moment of silence to the horror the brothers witnessed, and to pray for those who no longer live to suffer. He looks at Rod and continues. "We were able to save 2 of the women. We burned the corpses in a holy blaze before returning here." "Did you find and kill the pack leader?" "Right after I ripped his arms and legs off, yes. We brought the women to the Blade Arms and collected our reward. The usual activities came next. We ate, then Slade ventured to the whorehouse. Slade said he needed to blow off some steam before heading north." "You plan to take the train?" "Since the contract put us several days behind, yes, that was the plan. I made my way to the train station for tickets, but it wasn't leaving for several more days. I ventured to the square for supplies, taking my time. I wanted to give Slade adequate time before discussing our options, whether we wait for the train or travel through the desert. Rod interjects, and this is where things took a nosedive. Yes, Gabriel replies, taking his last bite of potatoes before continuing his story. I made my way to Pussy Palace in the lower district. No sign of Slade. The bouncer said he never saw him. Not the first time Slade's lost himself in the lower district looking for something exotic. I came across a group of men heading through a maze of alleyways, probably a dozen or so. That's where I found him. The colossal man pauses, reflecting on the incident. He hopes to recount more information than what he is about to give. His brown eyes wrestle with his memory before finishing. The men were all the same. I could see no life in their eyes, like a blank vessel. Slade was in the center. I slipped through the pack to reach him. I tried to snap him out of it, but nothing. Just standing there, staring into the depths of the tunnel ahead. Everything went to shit when I tried to get him away from the pack. That is about the time they all turned on me. I fought them off with my bare hands, but when I saw a group of them usher Slade into the darkness, that's when the rage overtook me. All I remember next is the pit. So the question is, what's changing the men? Looks to be only certain men. What do they share in common? Rod asks. He wasn't expecting an answer from Gabriel, just throwing the obvious questions onto the table, hoping that it will ignite the brains between the two men. Not enough to go on at this point. A curse, Gabriel answers. A curse from men? Do you recall any women in the area? No. You weren't affected, so what is the trigger from the curse? Possibly a brand? The giant hunter recounts, slouching over the table, flicking the remaining scraps of food on his plate. Maybe, but no body to verify, Rod responds, shaking his head from the questions piling up in his mind. Each question just leads to another, then another. This isn't getting us anywhere. His last resort lingers on his shoulders like a bag of bricks, stacking on top of him with each question he musters. Rod has no desire to seek out the vile wretch, but knows the answers are there. The villain owes the hunter much, but each passing favor leads the hooded rogue closer to penance. Rod clenches his fist tighter with the mere thought of coming face to face with the vampire one more time. He exhales a deep sigh, knowing this is the fastest way of finding Slade. Time is against them, especially since they have no idea what ails these men. Rod looks back to Gabriel. Let's head back to Elena's place. She'll be excited to see you. I know someone we can talk to at nightfall. We'll return then. Gabriel agrees. The two lay a tip on the table for Rosalind and exit the tavern. They make haste to the young tinker's house, waiting for the cover of night to meet with Rod's contact.